Hi everyone, my name is Karen, this is my channel RatherBeReading, and today I'm bringing to you a recent reads video. It has been a week since I last checked in with you guys for a recent reads video. I've had another pretty good reading week. I managed to read 8 books this week and I also DNF'd another. We've had a lot of DNFs lately, but we'll get into that in due course. So let's just jump straight in and talk about all 8 books that I managed to complete over this past week. So the first book I want to talk about that I finished this past week is 10,000 Skies Above You by Claudia Gray. This is the second book in the Firebird trilogy, which is a YA sci-fi trilogy. The first book follows a character named Marguerite who her father has recently been killed and his technology that him and his wife were working on has been stolen, and this technology is like this device that makes it possible for people to travel through dimensions into like alternate universes, and it's about Marguerite basically manages to also travel through dimensions in order to track down the person that murdered her father and stole this technology. And that's basically the premise of the first book. I really enjoyed this second installment as well. We get a lot more kind of building around the Firebird and exactly like how it works kind of, but like any issues with it and like all the stuff around the whole technology. There's a lot more kind of development of that in this particular book, which I really enjoyed. We got to see more alternate universes. I have realized that alternate universes is one of my favorite things basically to read about. I love the idea of like being able to see an alternate version of yourself, and sometimes it's completely different world, but sometimes it's a world where like maybe if one thing had just been different, and seeing how if that one thing was different, how your entire life can have changed based on that one thing. I find that whole thing really interesting. And I love reading alternate universe stories, so I really enjoyed the jumping through all the different worlds and all of that. I really liked the ending of this. I'm totally pumped to read the final book. In the end, I gave this one 4 stars, which is the same rating that I gave the first book, which is a pretty good rating for a second book in a trilogy. Let's be real. Okay, the next book that I completed was Lying Out Loud by Cody Keplinger. So I had recently read, I think I've read them all this year. It might have been late last year anyway. I read The Duff, I read The Shutout, and I then last week, as you may have seen, read A Midsummer's Nightmare. The Duff I really enjoyed. It's probably still my favorite of hers. The Shutout, I think it's called, it's just Shutout. I also really enjoyed. But then I read her book, A Midsummer's Nightmare, last week and didn't love it. And then I jumped straight into this one. I bumped this up my TBR because these are all technically companion books. They're not, for the most part, super linked. They all take place basically in the same small town and at the same kind of high school. In this one though, you do get a lot more links to the previous books because the main character's best friend is the younger sister of the main male character from The Duff, if that makes sense. But you do get little cameos from basically every character from her previous books, main characters, in this one. So if that's something you're looking for, this has got you covered. So the main premise of this one is we have a main character named Sunny. Yes, Sunny, girl, short for Sonia, who is a very she's a self-proclaimed great liar, and she lies all the time, kind of about everything, about small things, but also about big things. At the start of the novel, she is lying about about her mum kicking her out, and she's basically living with her best friend, but they haven't told her best friend's parents. She's just like sneaking in at night and sneaking out in the morning, staying at her best friend's because her mum's kicked her out, but she's kind of lying about that. You know that from the synopsis. She's lying. She lies to everyone about her dad's in prison, and so she's lied to everyone basically about that. She says that he's a businessman and he's always away and all of that. So that's Sunny as a character. But then at the start of this novel, there's this boy at school who has kind of a crush on her best friend, and they end up sending him they're like writing this kind of jokey email to him that's quite like mean, and then it accidentally gets sent. And she is on her laptop and he writes to her on IM, and they end up having this IM conversation. It's a Giles tale. Would it be a video without a Giles tale? She ends up writing IMing with him kind of all night. They end up having this really kind of in-depth chat and she feels like they really connect, to then discover that she was logged in on the best friend's email like account and she didn't realize, and she doesn't realize till he signs off saying like, good night, best friend's name, I think it's Amy, good night Amy, and she's like, oh crap, I'm not Amy. It all kicks off from there. I did not like this. This is my least favorite of Cody Keplinger's that I've read so far. It still had some good things in here. I liked the commentary. I like that she has characters with different backgrounds. In this one, you've got her, that she's got a father that's in jail and her mother is not a very supportive or great parent, but she's got a friend who's got a very different upbringing, much wealthier upbringing. And then you've got the main male character whose parents are going through a divorce, but his father is in politics, but the mother has relocated them to this small town, so he's dealing with that. So you get a lot of like different kind of backgrounds and stuff, which I do enjoy. I just really didn't like Sunny. Like, she's a self-proclaimed great liar, and she just lies all the time about, like I said, about everything, and it really bothered me. Like, I don't think she's supposed to be likable because it obviously is supposed to be allowing for like character growth, but she lies about everything. She doesn't have a lot of money because obviously she doesn't have parents to like give her money, and she keeps getting fired from jobs. And so she like lies to the lunch lady like every day about stuff, and so that she can get lunch for free. And like, I get that it's out of necessity, but she's just lying all the time. Like, she's late to school and then she lies about why she's late to school, and all of that's like kind of minor, but then, you know, she's lying about these really big life issues even to her best friend. And I get some of it, but then other things I just really didn't like. And then the whole premise around her like pretending to be the best friend like in this relationship, I hated. And I get that it's like a trope quite often in like, you know, rom-com-y type things, but in this I just didn't like the way it was done. It's just, there were so many options. She kept saying, oh, it was one of those things where every time she would go to tell him, he would say, oh, I've got to go somewhere, and then would like shut down the conversation or change the subject or whatever, and she would just never tell him. And I was just like, that never is true in real life. If you want to tell him, you can just say, look, no, stop what you're saying. I really have to tell you this. This is the situation. There were so many opportunities where she could have told him and she just chose not to. She's also a really shit friend. Like, the whole big thing in this is that her and the best friend are like the greatest friends ever, and they've always been a duo and they're such great friends, and she was such a terrible friend to her friend. And then the friend herself was also super underdeveloped. You're just told constantly how she's the most nicest, sweetest girl that like ever existed, but you never really see it yourself like on page. Like, she's just not really developed that much at all. Yeah, I just didn't really like the way that this was dealt with at all. Like I said, I didn't like the premise, I didn't really like the characters. I gave it a 2.75 stars, which on reflection is maybe a little bit generous. Like I say, it does have some good things in here. I like the backgrounds and I like some of the things that she's kind of trying to comment on, but I just did not think that it was at all well handled in this. And like I said, I gave it 2.75 stars. So there's that. Then we come to my DNF, which is a controversial kind of DNF. So I DNF'd The 10th Girl by Sarah Faring, which, as you may know, was one of my quite hyped releases that was coming out when my library got this audiobook in and I was able to get it. I was super pumped, but boy, this was tough. Now, this is not a DNF forever. This is a DNF for right now, and I'm actually probably going to come back to this pretty soon. But so what was happening was, as I've been off work, which I've mentioned a lot, it is my final weekend. I go to start my new job on Monday. But because I've been off work and I've been listening to my audiobooks in little chunks, which I'm not used to. I'm used to normally listening to audiobooks in like big chunks within like a day to 2 days usually. This is not the type of book that you can read in little chunks. It is a very confusing story. I had literally no idea what was going on. I DNF'd this and I think I was 30% of the way through, and it's quite a long book. It's like a 15-hour audiobook, so it's like a lengthier one. Like I said, I think I was about 30% of the way through, and I was just so confused. And I have looked at some other reviews, like non-spoiler reviews. This has pretty poor ratings. I feel like this was a book a lot of people were really hyped for, and then it's been kind of disappointing for a lot of people. I do want to give this another go though, because I think I could maybe get into this if I listen to it in chunks. So I think I'm going to put it back on hold. And then if it comes off hold once I'm at work, I'm hoping I'll be able to listen to audiobooks in bigger chunks when I start my new job. We'll see. That may not be the case, but I think I will be able to. I'm going to give it a second chance. I rarely DNF something with the idea of giving it a second chance, but this one I do want to try again because I was so hyped for this and the premise is so interesting. But, so I should mention the premise, I guess. This is YA. It says it's YA, but I don't know if it is. It's a thriller. You're following a character who's got a teacher at the school, but she is young. She's like recently would have graduated herself, and she's like faked her credentials. She's like 18, I think. And anyway, she's gone to be a teacher at this boarding school in this really remote area at the like southernmost tip of South America in Patagonia. And it's very gothic, and there's very like creepy shit going on at school. But I wasn't exactly sure what was going on at the school because it was all very confusing. So like I said, I did DNF that, but I'm maybe going to give that one a second chance. Next, we moved on to The Bay of Shadows by Samantha Wood. This is one of my Kindle backlist books. Again, I have no idea how I got this book. I thought I was at a section of my, I've mentioned a few times that I thought I was at a section of my Kindle where I had up to books that I had purchased because I like knew about them, but I have no idea what this book is. It's Australian and it's a thriller, so it may just be one that I saw and I really thought the premise was interesting, and so I purchased it. But this is a thriller. It's about a woman who has a foster child, a foster son, and basically his dad is about to be released from prison, and so he is maybe going to get back custody of the son, but he's not a very nice man, and he's basically like waging this like war of terror kind of against this woman. That's the basic premise. I really didn't like this book. I honestly would have DNF'd this, except like I said, I've been DNFing so many books recently. I've DNF'd like I think 4 books in like the last month. And so I was just like, oh, I don't want to DNF another book. And this is only like 225 pages or something like that. So I was just like, just push through and finish it. So I did, but it was not good, if I'm being honest. So the writing just felt super clunky. I didn't enjoy the writing. She constantly refers to her foster child. I think his name's Daniel. Anyway, she constantly refers to him as the boy, which I was just like, it felt really weird. I was like, why are you just saying the boy? Like, people don't refer to other people like that. Not even just in conversation, but like in her narrative, she'd be like, the boy was asleep on the couch. And I was just like, why are you saying that? Then also the little boy plays soccer, and the details in there about soccer were just blatantly incorrect. There was just some really incorrect things in there. And it was literally the type of thing that if you had asked any person who was like actually involved in soccer, they could have just given you a few like details that you could have put in that would have at least sounded legit. And to me, that's just really lazy writing. And like, I know I'm a bit biased about it because I have been involved in soccer my entire life, not necessarily as a player my whole life, because I only got into playing when I was in my teen years, and I haven't played for the last year or so. Year or 2 years it's been since I stopped playing. Anyway, but my family has been involved in soccer. My brother has been playing since like under 6s, since I was like 8, and we've been going to games like every weekend for like my entire life. Like, soccer was a big part of my whole family's life for like years and years and years. So I know a lot about it. And yeah, so just those details, I was just like, that's just weird that you've put that in there. Like, literally it would have taken a less than 10-minute conversation with anyone who's like ever played soccer or knows anything about it, and they would have been able to like steer you in the correct direction. So anyway, that really annoyed me. And then also the main character's decisions around like what was going on were just so dumb. When she's first, like, this first incident happens in the book, she doesn't, like, she's like, oh, I can't report it to the police because the police will decide that my house is unsafe and they'll take him away. And I was like, what? It's the man that they're going to be releasing him to that is like arranging this war of terror on you. So why would you not report that to the police? Because then probably they won't give him back to that man. It was just really, really dumb. And like every decision she made around that whole circumstances was just, every time she did, I was like, why would you do that? I just don't think any like rational person would make the decisions that the character was making. Also, trigger warnings for animal death. This is the second book I've read in 2 weeks that has a dog that gets killed. So just warnings for that as well. So I already wasn't liking this book, but that didn't help its cause. I ended up giving that 2 stars. Now we come to the books that I read during my personal little 24-hour readathon that I did. If you haven't checked that out, I will link it in the cards. I finished 4 books over that 24 hours. The first of this, which I'd read half of before the readathon started, is Innocence by Kathleen Tesaro. This is actually a reread for me. I read this years and years and years ago. I want to say probably in like around 2008. So like maybe like 10, 11 years ago. Anyway, this is a story about a character named Evie who is American, but she's just turned like 18 or 19, and she is basically relocated to London to go to this like performing arts school because she wants to be an actress. And she ends up rooming, like she gets a flat with these two other characters. The main one that the story deals with is Robbie, who is like the complete opposite of Evie. She's completely out there and flamboyant and just very like over the top, huge personality. And so we follow the story in two timelines. We follow the timeline when Evie's at this school and meeting Robbie and forming a friendship with her, but we also follow the story, I can't remember how many years later it is. It's quite a while later, when she is a single mother of a small child. We know that Robbie has died, but she starts to see Robbie's ghost. So it does have kind of a speculative twist, but it's mainly like a contemporary story. And so we follow kind of those two timelines. I wanted to reread this because I couldn't remember that much about it, but I had in my mind, I felt like I had really enjoyed it when I read it. I don't know if that's true because I didn't love it this time around. The actual story itself was okay. There was nothing like super amazing about it, but it was just like an okay, like interesting read. Like, but then the ending happened and I was just like, what? It's one of those really incomplete endings, and sometimes I love an incomplete ending, but it has to be done in the right circumstances. This was not the right circumstances for me. Literally, it kind of leaves you on a, this is kind of maybe minor spoilers, so if you don't want to know anything, skip ahead. I'll put a spoiler warning on the screen or something. But so basically there's a point where you maybe think that she's going to have to choose between these two guys. A love triangle in this is not prevalent, but there's a circumstance that comes up quite late in the book where you're like, okay, and then the story just ends and you don't ever really sure which person it is. And like, so it's just to your interpretation, which I was just like, what? Like, this is a contemporary story and you're not going to confirm. Like, I'm pretty sure I know which one it was supposed to be that she was going with, but I don't know. It was just, that really annoyed me. Maybe some people would like that. I didn't. Like I said, the overall story itself was okay, but I didn't love this. I gave it 3 stars. I then read Notorious 19 by Janet Ivanovic. This is the 19th book in the Stephanie Plum series, which is a chick lit series about a bounty hunter who gets into all kinds of hijinks and shenanigans. She's not a good bounty hunter, and it's just all about her, like different cases and stuff, and it's all very like comedic. This one I didn't love. We once again still don't have a resolution to the love triangle at 19 books in. But also this one I just found more problematic than usual. These books have always kind of got some problematic elements, but this book dealt with a couple of different things that I'm not going to go into, but I was just like, I don't think that's the best way to deal with those topics, but it is what it is. I ended up giving it 3 stars. I then read a beloved book on BookTube, but also a quite hated book by some corners of BookTube, and that is Throne of Glass by Sarah J. Maas. I finally have started this series. So this is, of course, a YA fantasy about Selena Sardothian, who is a famed assassin she's in prison, and basically she's given this opportunity to compete in a like competition where if she wins, she will become the king's champion. And after so many years of being the king's champion, she'll like be given her freedom. And so she is going to enter that competition. I did enjoy this. I felt that the world was maybe a little bit underdeveloped. I wasn't exactly clear on exactly how this world kind of was working. I also think that there's a lot of talk in this about Selena being a total badass, but you never see her do a single badass thing in this book. And yeah, I was just like, you keep telling me how amazing she is, but at the start of the story she's in jail, so she's been caught, so she's kind of been that amazing, and then she literally does not one like totally awesome thing really during the book. So I was like, is she really as badass as what you're telling me that she is? I also found it overall like quite predictable, but I did enjoy it. It was like an enjoyable story. I liked the characters. I really think that this is a good setup for future books. I can see myself really getting invested in this world and these characters as the series goes on. So I gave this 3.5 stars. I then read Prom Wrecked by T.H. Hernandez and Jennifer D. Giovanni. This is a book that I did receive a digital copy in exchange for an honest review from NetGalley. This is a YA contemporary story, basically about a school where the prom has been cancelled. And so this main character takes it upon herself to try organise a replacement prom so that the prom isn't cancelled. And the premise basically says that she's starting to develop feelings for her ex-BFF's boyfriend, which it's not her ex-best friend as in that they've recently stopped being friends. It's like they were friends in elementary school, and then when they got to like middle school, one of them became cool and dropped the other one type of ex-best friend. Not that that's an issue, just letting you know how it is. This was just okay. Like, it was totally fine. There was nothing like super problematic about it or anything that I really disliked, but it was just nothing amazing. It was just very what you would expect from the story, very like light-hearted, fun, contemporary. I don't really have that much else to say about it. I ended up giving it 3 stars. And then the final book that I did complete over this past week was the Through the Woods graphic novel by Emily Carroll. So this is a graphic novel that is made up of like 5 shorter stories. And they're all like kind of dark, creepy, sinister stories. I'm going to go through them and tell you my rating for each of the individual stories. So we have Our Neighbor's House they're all by Emily Carroll. Our Neighbor's House, which I gave 3.25 stars. A Lady's Hands Are Cold, which I gave 3.5. That was my favorite. His Face All Red, which I gave 3 stars. My Friend Yana, which I gave 2.75 stars. And The Nesting Place, which I gave 3 stars. My average star rating averaged out to like 3.1, which I like rounded to a 3, just a straight 3-star. So I enjoyed the artwork, like kind of overall, and particularly like the color palette and all of that. It's like a very like dark, a lot of like blacks and reds and dark blues. I really liked that, but these actual stories themselves had so much potential for most of them, then they just didn't quite get to that level that I was hoping that they would get to. So it was just kind of okay. I was a little bit disappointed in it, if I'm being honest. Like, I still like enjoyed it, but it wasn't like as good as what I was hoping it would be. So that's everything I read. Very quickly to touch on the books that I'm currently reading, because I am actually currently reading 2 different things because I have an audiobook on the go. So I'm currently listening to The Bride Test by Helen Huang. I started this yesterday. I'm about a quarter of the way through so far. Enjoying it so far. This is the sequel to The Kiss Quotient, which is a adult romance. I am quite enjoying it so far. I've heard a lot of people say they enjoy it, but it's not as good as the first one, so I'm looking forward to kind of forming my own opinion, but about a quarter of the way through that. And then I am also currently reading Crown of Midnight by Sarah J. Maas, the sequel, of course, to Throne of Glass. I'm currently 276 pages through this, so I'm like 3/4, 2/3, something like that of the way through this, so I'll probably finish this today. Quite enjoying this. I do think that this is like a step up from the first book so far, but I'm interested to see where we go. So that is what I am currently reading and what I have read this past week. That's it, I think. I would love to chat with you guys in the comments down below if you've got any thoughts on any of the books that I've been reading or that I'm currently reading, or if you would like to chat with me about what you have been reading recently. I would love to know. Please like this video if you liked it. Please subscribe if you want to see more from my channel. That is all I have for this video today. Bye guys!